I love video games. Like, really love video games. I love everything about them. Playing them, watching streamers play them, reading about them, and it almost got to a point where I was so engrossed in trying to make them. Some of my earliest memories of me and my dad playing Tekken 5 on our old chunky PlayStation 2 way back when I was probably like 6 years old in 2004. We would sit there hunched in front of our old CRTV for hours until mom came and put an end to that. Fast forward a couple of years and my friends in the neighborhood had PS2s of their own and the fun just multiplied. Jax, Ratchet and Clank, Black, God of War 1 and 2, the forever loved and infamous Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. We played them all and loved it. Jump into 2008 and the PlayStation 3 rolls around, and my dad happened to be in Japan at the time, so I got the early hookup. During its life cycle, I expanded my horizons to the likes of Fallout 3, Skate 2, the Prototype series, and Tom Clancy's Hawks 2. Jump into the current day and I'm still very in love with video games. In the time I've been playing them, I've made friends through video games. I've joined communities of like-minded people who share the same passion and need to revel in video games. Being the curious person that I am, I began to wonder, what do my friends play when we're all playing together? What do Botswana in general play in their own time? What consoles dominate the market? What platforms dominate the market? With these questions in mind, I decided to go and find out for myself. To do this, I ran an online survey and sat down with some people to go over the results of the survey and gain perspective. The survey itself was split into 4 sections: identities and motivations, platforms, which I split again into 2, PC and console, as I figured these would be the biggest platforms, games and genres, and finally the pro scene. The survey ran for 2 weeks and I only got 86 participants. While this is admittedly a very low turnout, I can still make some observations with the data that I collected. Now, before we can get into the results of the survey, I'd like to introduce the 2 people I'll be breaking down the data with. First, we have Ravi S, a gamer at heart just like me, and one of Botswana's more prominent gaming content creators. Second, we have Dr. Dosage, a guy I met through Apex Legends more than a year and a half ago, and we've been kicking it ever since. Getting back into the meat and potatoes of why you're here. The survey. Firstly, let's address the identities and the motivations of the gamers in Botswana, who they are and why they play games. Of the people who participated in the survey, 39% say they play games at least once a day, 28% say they play as humanly possible, and the remaining 40% play occasionally.
I feel like that depends on how your life is and how your priorities are set up. For example, if gaming is your main source of income, like you're a streamer or a content creator of these video games, then obviously you're gonna manage your time into majority of it being playing these video games so that you push out content, right?
Yeah.
But my personal take on it, on where I fall is, I'm a gamer in the sense that if I have nothing to do, like nothing work-wise or anything that takes top priority in my life, like school or work, I will sneak in gaming.
84% of the participants said if possible, they would like to play games more often. and the remaining 16% are a mixture of no's and maybes. With that in mind, the next logical question is, why aren't people playing games as often as they'd like to? And it's mainly two reasons. 27% say they don't have adequate access to gaming hardware, and 49% say they simply don't have the time. The rest is a mixture of reasons such as prohibitive living situations, poor network infrastructure, and financial constraints. Lastly, we need to address why people play video games in the first place. 60 people say they play games for the thrill of it all. 40 say for escapism. 26 say for the sense of community. And 39 say just to alleviate boredom. Now, if you're wondering, well, that doesn't add up to 86. Well, yeah, it doesn't. But they were allowed to pick multiple, and these were the 4 that came up the most. Now, the next thing we need to address is the platforms that people play on. And before we can get into the specifics, we need to address a little curiosity of mine. How many people play on multiple platforms? It's 2021 and access to affordable platforms is greater than ever. So I asked them if they play on multiple platforms, and 64% say they do, and the remaining 36% say they don't. Now, of those who play on multiple platforms, 64% say they only play on 2 platforms, and 36% say they play on 3 or more.
So then that's like what, a mobile phone, a PC, a PlayStation, maybe an Xbox or a PSP or something like that.
Moving on to the platform specifically, 45% say they play on console as their primary platform of choice. 41% say they play on PC, and the remaining 14% say they play on mobile phones.
People are on PC solely because I don't think they went for PC gaming. I think a majority of the people, there's a PC around them. Maybe it's a school laptop or just any other computer, and because of boredom or a friend or one way or another, it led to them having a game on that PC. And then that's when I feel like that's how they got introduced to this gaming life on PC, and I feel like that's why PC is top of the list.
Now I decided to look into the 2 major platforms in detail, starting off with console gamers. Now, there are 2 major players in Botswana in terms of the console market: Sony's PlayStation and Microsoft's Xbox. And coming to no surprise to me and the people I talk to, 79% are Team Blue or PlayStation, and the remaining 21% are on Microsoft Xbox.
PlayStations, they have exclusive titles. That's one of the many things that make PlayStation the favorable platform. As someone who actually used the PlayStation 4 when it came out, it makes you feel like it's like the Apple of mobile, of like consoles.
Consoles have what we refer to as generations, or basically iterations. And I decided to ask again what generations the console gamers are on. And 87% say they're on the last generation, which is PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. 8% say they're on the current gen, which is PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S. And the remaining 5% are on older generations: the PlayStation 3, 2, Xbox 360, and the like. When it comes to satisfaction, 84% say they are happy with being on console, and the remaining 16% say they're not. And when asked if they would be given given the opportunity to switch, 55% said yes, and 45% said no. As to what is stopping people from switching, as indicated with the previous data, 42% say they're just happy with what they're on, and a stark 50% say the cost of gaming hardware. And I'm guessing this has to do with the incoming new generation, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. The remaining percentages are made of primarily the lack of hardware availability and backlog on orders. Moving on to the next section, the PC master race. Here I looked at what kind of builds people have and if they're happy with it. And to address the first question, the vast majority of people are on an Intel CPU and an NVIDIA GPU, coming in at 49%. The next biggest combination is 27% with an AMD CPU and an NVIDIA GPU. The rest is made up of AMD CPU and an AMD GPU, or an Intel CPU and an AMD GPU. Next, I asked them whether they're satisfied with their current build, and coming in at no surprise, the vast majority, which is 78%, say they're not, and the remaining 22% say they are. Now, as to whether they would switch platforms, the majority say they wouldn't, coming in at 68%, and the rest said they would. As to what's stopping them from switching, 63% say the cost of hardware, 17% say the availability of hardware, and another 17% say they're just happy. The rest is just about the availability of people they can play with, which is a key factor in why some people choose their platforms. Moving on to the next section, we're going to be exploring the games and the genres in which those games belong to. Now, like any other media, video games have a plethora of genres that the games can fall into. To make things more efficient, I broke it down into two questions. Firstly, I looked at the core genres, then next I asked more general genres. The core genres that I looked at were action, adventure, educational, music, puzzle, role-playing or RPG, simulation, strategy, and sports. Action games got the lion's share at 48%, and coming in second was sports at 20%. 11% was given to adventure. Strategy games got 4%, simulation games got 8%, role-playing games got 6%, and the remaining is a mixture of educational and puzzle games. Next, we'll look into the subgenres. Now, this is where things get very complicated and you can get lost very quickly. So I picked 10 and allowed the participants to pick up to 5. And I'm only going to talk about the top 5 that got selected. With 65 people picking it, shooters was the leader by a large margin. Next we have competitive with 42 selections, then racing with 41 selections, survival with 40 selections, and lastly fighting games with 39 selections. Next, I decided to ask them what their current favorite game to play is, and coming in at 18 mentions, Apex Legends was number 1, which is quite surprising. Also kind of endearing, seeing as I am a huge Apex Legends fan. Next, we have one variety of the expansive Call of Duty franchise with 11 people, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds with 4 mentions comes in at 3rd. The rest is a large selection of various games, only getting about 1 vote each, so I won't be going into detail about any of those. Next, I decided to ask them what their favorite game of all time is, and boy is this a list. From the likes of Apex Legends, to the Call of Duty series, to the Grand Theft Auto series, to the Forza series, World of Warcraft, NBA 2K series. They were a lot of games. And when I asked them why those specific games, a lot of it stemmed from nostalgia. Someone says it was the first time they bought the game, and some other things were elements that made the game, such as the storyline, the visuals, the pacing, and the like. Lastly, we're going to look at the pro scene. Here, we're going to be talking about streamers and content creation. So when I asked them if they watched any streamers play games, 80% say they do, and 20% say they didn't. I then asked how often they watch streamers, and 35% say they rarely do, 40% say occasionally, 14% daily, and 11% every other day. When asked about where they watch those streamers, I got some interesting results. 55% say they watch on YouTube Gaming, 21% say they watch on Twitch, and the remainder watch on a plethora of other platforms, some which don't exist anymore, like Mixer. Next, I asked about which streamers they watch the most, and as you can guess, there were a lot of different answers, from PewDiePie to Janks to Asu, Shift FPS, Staycation. They were a lot. Next, I looked into whether they think that there's space for locals to become streamers and gaming content creators in general. And there is a lot of encouraging data here. 72% say they believe that locals can get into the content creation game. 14% say they don't think so, and another 14% are unsure. Next, I asked them about what they feel is hindering the growth of the local gaming content creation scene. And it boils down to 3 main things: poor network infrastructure, a high cost of entry or barrier to entry, whether that be the network infrastructure that is here already or the gaming hardware and the like. And lastly, support being weak for those who are already trying. Well, this is all I have for you this time. If you have made it this far, I'd like to extend my sincerest thanks to you for powering through the jank. I know this video was a little rough at parts, but it was a first attempt. So please don't be gentle in the comments. Speaking of, if you have any suggestions for a part 2, because I'd very much like to do a follow-up video in the very near future, I'd like to hear them in the comments down below. Also, if you like the music, I got it from Epidemic Sounds. I'll leave a link down the description. You can sign up for Epidemic Sounds, give you a month trial if you like to make content of your own. So please sign up using my link. It'll help me out if you decide to sign up for Once again, thank you for watching. I'll have a few social links down below where you can contact me directly if you want to talk to me directly for whatever reason concerning this video and any other project you'd like to see me do. This has been me, Potato Jack, Jiggy Titan Son, whichever you prefer, signing out. Till next time.